If you're a sous or an executive sous who's willing to do what it takes to become an executive chef before burning out or washing out, then this video is for you. Looking back, if I had to go from sous chef to executive chef all over again, I'd do it a little bit differently than I did it that first time. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 big shifts I would make in how I cooked, how I led, and how I communicated. And by the end, you'll have a clear idea of which one is holding you back the most, and you'll know exactly which lever to pull in the next 30 to 90 days. So that way you can stop just grinding and start moving forward to that capital E executive chef role on purpose. If we haven't met before, my name is Gerald Ford. I'm a certified master chef. I've spent almost 30 years in the industry in luxury hotels, private clubs, international competition, Michelin-starred restaurants. Now I coach executive chefs and culinary leadership around the world. In the Executive Chef Career Map video here on my channel, I talked about the stages from line cook to capital E executive chef. And in the 90-day kitchen reset video, I laid out a 90-day playbook for new executive chefs. This video is the bridge between those two and what I would do differently in that sous to exec window if I had to start over. Early in my career, I had plenty of mistakes. I tried to outcook my way into leadership. I fought systems because I thought they were handcuffs. I treated GMs and HR like the other side. And I let my emotions run the show more often than I'd like to admit. So as I go through these 5 shifts, I invite you to honestly score yourself, maybe from 1 to 5 on each one, and be honest about what's actually holding you back. So let's get on with it with shift 1. Work to be the best cook, but stop trying to prove it. If I had to do it all over again, I'd still work to be the best cook I possibly could be, but I'd stop trying to prove it every single service. When your identity is, I'm the best on the line, you end up doing what I did for years. You jump on every station, you grab every hard task, you rescue every service, which has its perks. And sure, it made me feel important, but the team just learns that nothing works unless this guy's around, and that guy. If I started over, I'd treat mastery as my homework, not as my performance. I'd still do the extra reps, I'd still study, stage, burn myself practicing late at night with a half a gallon of yerba mate running through my veins. But on the job, I'd focus more on setting my station so anyone could run it, teaching the less experienced cooks how to hit the standard, and letting other people have a great service without me meddling. Sometimes it's helpful, but learning how to tell the difference is huge. So be honest with yourself for a second. Ask yourself a quick question. Are you spending more energy showing you're the best on the line, or quietly becoming better and making the people around you better? If you had to rate that from a 1 to a 5, where would you put yourself? 1 being that you're always showing you're the best on the line, and 5 being that you're really a solid teacher. And then move on to shift 2. Embrace systems that work instead of fighting them. Second shift, I would stop fighting systems just because I didn't want to be a systems guy, really. Systems stunt creativity and flow, right? Well, I used to think systems were for average cooks. Now I know systems are what protect the craft and allow great cooks to do great work and allow great chefs to build great cooks consistently without drowning in process. And if I started all over again, I'd look for systems that really work. Checklists, recipes, training flows, and I'd run them as written before trying to tweak them. I shake my head because I made a lot more work for myself than I should have. And any system that's actually made life easier for the team, well, I'd be the one who defends it, not the one trying to dodge it, and certainly not the one trying to undo it. You don't get extra points for doing everything from memory. You just get extra stress. So think about the last time a new system or checklist got introduced in the kitchen. Was your first reaction to run it as written and see if it works? Or to start looking for ways around it? If you're honest, which one do you default to most of the time? 1 if you're a dodger and 5 if you're an embracer. On to shift 3. I would communicate more with my mentors. More frequency, more conversation. For a long time, I treated mentors like a once in a while, don't want to bother them thing. When things got hard, I'd disappear into my own head and try and push through and prove that I could do it instead of picking up the phone and saying, here's what's going on, what am I not seeing? If I started again, I would ask for help more often. Put reoccurring time on the calendar and reach out. Share what am I stuck on, and ask about the patterns that I don't see that they did. More frequency, more depth, less pride. You know, if you step back and you think about the mentors that you've had for a second, when was the last time you had a real, honest conversation with one of them about your leadership and your career? Not just about food. A quick note before we get into the last two, if you're listening to this and thinking to yourself that you really are trying to figure it out all alone and most of your systems are still in your head, you're not broken, but you are carrying a lot more work than you need to be. And that's exactly why I put together the 90-day kitchen reset for executive chefs. It's just a starter kit that plugs straight into the work you've been doing on this path. A 10-minute daily debrief, a 7 non-negotiable template, cleaning checklists, pre and post huddles, and a simple weekly scorecard. And if you want a ready-made structure you can adapt, instead of inventing everything between services, the link's below the video and you can grab it now just by clicking. Moving into shift number 4, learn to speak general manager and HR without losing your soul. Yep, that 4th shift, I would learn to speak GM and HR a lot earlier. You don't have to buy into it all, but if you can't speak their language at all, it's almost impossible to get what you need for your team. And if I started again as a sous or exec sous, I'd ask to sit in on P&L reviews and budget meetings, learn basic levers of food cost, labor cost, overtime, and turnover. I'd practice making simple, clear cases in their terms, trying to invest in training or trying to replace a piece of equipment and speaking about liability risk or cutting of labor. The sooner you can do that, the faster you accelerate. You don't have to become a general manager, but you do need to be able to walk into their office and have a grown-up conversation about what your kitchen needs and why that matters. So put yourself in a chair across from your general manager or your HR director for a second. On a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you that you can clearly explain what your team needs and why it matters? Give yourself a 1 if not at all. Give yourself a 5 if you've practiced it a few times. Find yourself somewhere in between. Moving on to shift 5, control my emotions, leverage the passion, temper the frustration. I would learn to control my emotions a lot sooner. Not by killing passion, but by directing it, focusing it. Passion is one of our superpowers as chefs, but when we don't manage it, it turns into slamming pans, snapping at staff, taking mistakes personally, saying the wrong thing, making decisions no one can recover from. That doesn't make people want to follow you. That just makes them walk on eggshells and avoid giving you information that's critical to your success. If I started again, I would decide that my tone on the pass should be a standard, even tone. Just like sweeping before service, it's a given. It's a set. It's always the same. Use passion to raise the bar and to celebrate wins when the team hits them. Leverage it in teaching and research and development. And then when frustration spikes, just find that space to pause. And if you can find that space to pause, the question I used to ask myself is this really about them, or am I tired, stressed, frustrated? Am I doing what's right for the team? My goal is always to be intense, but to be in control. Picture your worst service this month. If someone had filmed that night, would you be proud to sit your younger self down? Or would you be embarrassed? The version of you who wants to be a capital E executive chef needs to be able to control those emotions. So let's recap those 5 shifts from the top. First, work to be the best cook. Stop trying to prove it every single night. 2, embrace the systems that work instead of fighting them. 3, communicate more with my mentors. More frequent, more depth, more real conversation. 4, learn to speak GM and human resource so you get what you need and you can explain to them what you actually need. 5, control my emotion. Leverage the passion, temper the frustration, stay even, especially in interaction. If you've been following along and taking notes as you go, look at those 5 and just answer the question. Which one should you do more? Which one, if you actually improved over the next year, would change the trajectory of your career? That's the lever that you need to pull. And if you haven't already and you want help on the structure side, grab the 90-day kitchen reset for executive chefs at the link below. It's designed to plug straight into the phases and habits we've covered in this series, so you're not starting from a blank page. And if you're already in an executive chef role or about to step into one, and you know your kitchen would benefit from systems-based structure, I offer a 30, 60, 90-day kitchen reset call for executive chefs. On that call, we'll look at where your kitchen is, identify the friction, and map out the next 30, 60, 90 days so you can lead with clarity and structure. And if that sounds like where you are now, the link to schedule that call is just below the one to download the 90-day reset. Regardless, I invite you to pick one of these shifts, write it down, and commit to it for the next 30 days. And if you got a minute, drop a comment below and tell me which shift is going to make the most difference for you, then what you're going to change because of it. Now, thank you for spending your time with me. If you found this video helpful, the next thing to watch is a 7 non-negotiables video. It builds directly on this. I'll put it right here on the screen for you to check that out. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I'll catch you later.